When Kerem was 8, his home country of Turkey felt full of promise. President Erdogan was popular and had just expanded his power. He promised to fix the economy and protect national traditions. At first, things got better. Roads were rebuilt. Schools got new books. Kerem's parents found work again. But by the time Kerem was 13, his favorite news website had disappeared. Journalists were arrested for insulting the president. Over the next few years, opposition politicians were banned from appearing on TV. Some were jailed. Kerem's uncle, a local organizer, was brought in for questioning and stopped speaking up afterward. Now Kerem is 16. The same leader remains in power. Most news sounds the same. Protests are rare. Even in private, people avoid politics, not because they agree, but because it's safer to stay quiet. This isn't fiction. It reflects what many people have experienced here in Turkey and other countries where power has become concentrated and speaking out has become dangerous. In this lesson, we'll examine what concentrated power looks like, why some people support it, and what happens to a society when the government stops being accountable to its people. Let's get started. Here we are in Red Square in Moscow, Russia, an iconic place to talk about concentrated power. So, what does it mean to say power is concentrated in a government? Concentrated power means that decision-making flows in just one direction, from the top down. One person, or a very small group, makes all the big decisions. The rest of the population has little or no voice. There are no elections, or if there are, they're not free or fair. There's no sharing of power. That's what happened in Kerem's country. Power wasn't shared, it flowed in one direction. This kind of system is called an authoritarian government. Authoritarianism is a general term for any government where power is held by a few, and where people don't have the freedom to vote fairly, speak out, or hold their leaders accountable. Let's take a look at a few of the most common types of authoritarian governments. These systems all concentrate power, but they differ in who holds the power and how they claim authority. See if you can fill in the chart as we go through each type. First, a monarchy is a government where power is inherited through a royal family. The leader, like a king or queen, usually rules for life. Do you remember how monarchs claim authority? Tradition. Think of Saudi Arabia today, where the king holds nearly all the power. Next is theocracy. In a theocracy, religious leaders are in charge, and the laws are based on religious teachings. Here, leaders claim their authority comes from religion or a higher power. People follow not just out of loyalty, but because they believe it's the morally right thing to do. Iran is a good example, where clerics influence law and politics based on Islamic texts. Another type of authoritarian government is a dictatorship. This is a government where one person holds total power, often gained and maintained through force, like North Korea or Nazi Germany. And finally, an oligarchy is a government controlled by a small group of powerful people who run the government. These might be wealthy business owners, military leaders, or well-connected insiders. Their authority often comes from money or force, not from the people. Here in Russia today, for example, a small circle of billionaires and loyal officials hold a lot of power over government decisions. How do you think wealth and influence might be used to build an oligarchy? Well, you might have said that people with money can fund campaigns, influence the media, or make deals behind the scenes. Over time, they may gain more say in decisions than ordinary citizens, even without being elected. It's easy to look at dictatorships or theocracies and ask, why would anyone allow this? Sometimes it's just the ways things have always been. But other times, governments concentrate power not just to control, but because they believe it's the best way to solve problems. In Egypt, for example, leaders say strict control is needed to prevent extremist violence. In Venezuela, President Maduro has claimed that extraordinary control is necessary to protect the country's independence and help the poor. And often, large parts of the population agree, at least at first. Remember, Kerem's leader didn't start out as a dictator. People voted for him. They believed that one strong leader could solve the country's problems, and for a while, it seemed to work. You might wonder, why do so many people accept authoritarian governments as legitimate, and sometimes even support them? Take a moment to think about reasons why people might view each type of authoritarian government as legitimate. Record your thoughts in the guided viewing. Well, a monarchy might seem legitimate because it's rooted in tradition. In many places, kings and queens have ruled for centuries. People may feel a sense of loyalty, pride, or stability in continuing that legacy. We've always done it this way. A theocracy could be viewed as legitimate because it's based on shared religious beliefs. If citizens believe that the government reflects divine will, they may see its laws as sacred. God commands it. A dictatorship might gain legitimacy during a crisis when people are afraid and looking for strong leadership. A charismatic leader may promise to fix the economy, defeat enemies, or restore order. Only I can fix this. An oligarchy might be accepted as legitimate if the powerful are seen as successful, competent, or deserving, like wealthy business leaders or former generals. People might assume they know best how to lead. But when power becomes too concentrated in any form, when there are no checks, no votes, no accountability, things can change quickly. And those same people who once hoped for stability might find their rights slowly slipping away. What happens then? So, what is the impact of too much concentration of power in government? In Turkey, the consequences built up gradually, but they weren't random. They were choices made by those in power, and each choice had a real effect on people's lives. Let's look at a few examples. You might think of these as warning signs of authoritarianism. I'll name a government action, and you match each action with the possible impact in your guided viewing. First, the government shuts down independent news websites. What do you think happens next? Well, citizens lose access to unbiased information. They hear only what the government wants them to hear. Lies and corruption go unchecked. Next, protesters are arrested or persecuted. What's the impact? People lose a peaceful way to speak up. Frustration builds, but there's no safe outlet. That can lead to fear or violence. Next, opposition leaders are silenced, jailed, or disappear. What does that do to a society? It scares others into staying quiet. Without visible alternatives, people may start to believe change isn't even possible. What about when elections are rigged or people stop trusting the results? Why might this be dangerous? Because when people feel like their votes don't matter, they stop participating, and democracy stops working. Next, courts and judges start favoring the people in power. What could that lead to? Ordinary people can't expect to get justice. The rule of law is weakened or abandoned. Laws apply differently depending on who you are, and people lose faith in fairness. Take a moment to think about which of these changes would feel the most serious or scary to you. In Turkey, all of this happened over time, and like in many authoritarian systems, people stopped asking questions. Speaking up began to feel dangerous. But not everyone stays silent. In other places, people do resist. So what makes the difference? Sometimes it's support from outside the country. Sometimes the timing is just right. And sometimes it's just one person who refuses to stay silent and inspires others to do the same. In Turkey, journalist Can Dündar reported on government abuses. He was arrested for writing about protests against the government, survived an assassination attempt, and now lives in exile. But he still speaks out and inspires others to do so. And around the world, others resist too. We'll look at many more examples as we go through the course. Concentrated power may begin with good intentions. It may even be supported by the people. But history and Kerem's story remind us what happens when that power goes unchecked. That's why understanding how power works isn't just about knowing terms like monarchy or dictatorship. It's about protecting the rights that allow people to speak, vote, protest, and live freely. And it's about asking the hard questions, even when no one else is asking them. Next time, we'll explore what happens when power is shared. What does democracy look like? How does it work? And what are the challenges? Until then, think about this. When you do see power being misused, like Kerem did, what role could you play in stopping it? See you next time. Hey, hey.